Good afternoon, Rhode Nation. Marks Remarks is back for another week. It's Mark Radigan here. And this week, trying to find a new guest with a new perspective, someone that we haven't talked to or looking through a different lens, so to speak. So this week, I'm bringing in a close friend of mine. It's Connor Caldon, a photographer for Go Rhode, a photographer for URI Athletics. Covers a number of different sports here at URI. Connor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I've been trying to get more staffers and more people from behind the scenes of URI Athletics involved on the show to just share their experiences. And you were one of the first people I thought of because you really can't go on to the URI Athletics Instagram page without seeing some of your work. So, well, just to kind of get right into it, I'm curious. What were some of the steps that you took, or actually even before that? Was doing photography at this level something you always wanted to do?
No. I came into URI as a business major, and then I took a class my junior year of high school for photography, and I did mostly landscape stuff, like taking pictures of trees and mountains. Being from New Hampshire, there's lots of those. And then after that, my final project for that class, I did some pictures of the varsity baseball team. And then I really started to like sports with my camera that was older than me at the time. That was tough. The camera that was older than me was tough. But from there, I got into URI. I was actually gonna try to play club baseball instead of do this. And then they sent an email in August that was like, hey, URI Athletic Marketing, we're looking for game day ops, videographers, photographers. I was like, you know what, I'll send an email. That'd be fun working there. I'd just gotten a new camera at that point. And then from there, that's the funny part is I almost missed my interview for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was driving back from work, and I didn't even realize how close to the time the scheduled interview was. And then I was driving down and coming down toward my house. There's a hill, and then it turns on my house to the road of my house, and it hit 5 o'clock, the time I was supposed to do my interview, as I was turning on my road, and I was like, oh, God. I'm driving down my road trying to download Zoom on my phone so I can pull it up, and then I did the interview in my car and kind of got the job right there.
Oh, there you go. It seems like it was almost meant to be in that regard.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky I didn't miss the interview, or I wouldn't even be sitting here right now. So.
Well, yeah. And so when you say that you were doing a lot of work with a camera that was honestly older than you, so being from New Hampshire, was it always just strictly nature stuff and then just doing some more landscape things, or were you ever presented an opportunity to do some sports related content before coming to URI?
So the final project I did in that class my junior year was the first sports related thing I even tried, pretty much. And then so the camera I used was a Nikon D70, which was old. It had 6 megapixels on the sensor, so it's if you zoom in, you can count the pixels. And I took a lot of photos with that thing. It shot one photo it shot 3 photos a second, and the one I have now shoots 15 photos a second. So if you look on that, it's different levels. But that was the first thing I did with sports. And then my senior year, I did an independent study. So I created the class Digital Photography 2, so I could do more sports stuff. And then I kind of slowly start doing less of the nature stuff and more of I did some lacrosse photos. I carried a camera into a minor league baseball stadium. Because as long as you don't have the bag, you can walk it in pretty much anywhere with a camera.
It's pretty bizarre that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that the bags are a no, but you can walk in with this big lens and a big camera and be like, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna take photos of your product. But I did that, and then that summer was the first actual opportunity I had with a team, and it was in the NECBL, working for the Winnipesaukee Muskrats that don't exist anymore.
The Winnipesaukee Muskrats. That's how you know it's an NECBL team when you got a name like that. Oh, you got the Ocean State Waves, you got the Danbury Westerners near me,
and then you have the Winnipesaukee Muskrats.
What a name! What a name! And so then after your basically just miracle interview, getting the gig, joining up with the marketing team here at URI Athletics. So what were some of those like initial days like starting to get more involved in the team? Like, did you feel a little bit like out of depth there when you were first starting out, or did you feel comfortable from the jump?
It was definitely like an added depth thing because I wasn't very good. You could scroll through my Instagram and you can like find the photos from the first thing I ever did was freshman year football against Stony Brook. And God, they're not good. I just went through and like put them on my phone and sorted them and then didn't edit them and just put them straight out of the camera onto Instagram. So like I was just kind of like added depth there. There's only one other photographer there, Drew. Drew was there, and then, but I learned a lot from him. We can talk about him if you want.
Drew Adames, the hero photographer of at least my freshman year. I remember getting every photo I used for my first articles, starting with Anchor Sports Network here at URI when I was covering men's basketball. I think he provided me every single photo I used for my freshman year. So, Drew, if you listen to this, shout out to you. Big inspiration for both of us here. Big help.
Taught me a lot. I learned a lot. But
that was actually going to be my next question, was like, were there other people there in the marketing department that were there to sort of help you along the way in trying to make sure that you put out the best possible product?
Yeah, so that first football game was stressful until I kind of like the second half when I was kind of like getting into the idea of like, oh, okay, it's not that much different than shooting a high school football game. It's just on a bigger scale. There's a lot of people here. But then, I mean, yeah, Drew just kind of helped me get in the rhythm of what game day looks like, how we go from there, and then working toward getting better and better and better. And then eventually I learned how to edit photos, and now we're upgrading our skills.
So how often do you upgrade your equipment as you go through this process? Have you had the same equipment since freshman year, or have you experimented with different types of cameras, different price points in a sense?
So since my freshman year, I've just used only Sony gear, except, well, I mean, some of my lenses are third party, but they're made for Sony cameras. But I've had the Sony A7 III since freshman year. I still use it. It's a tank. That thing is like 300,000 shutter count on it right now.
Damn.
Yeah. Tell me about it. But that thing's a tank. And then I came in with 2 lenses, other than that, and then I bought one within the first week or so of being here, so I could get the longer length out of it. And then I bought one more right before basketball season started, so I could, because one of the little ones I had was just a little like kit lens. It came with the camera pretty much, so it's this little crappy lens. And then I upgraded that, and then I didn't make a considerable upgrade until like August of 2022, because then I bought a second camera body. Yeah. So I could just kind of dual wield, I was out there. Yeah. I got my little harness on.
Got the straps, one camera
I got
on
the harness.
side.
I got 2 cameras on. I got a camera on each side. I can like pick them up real quick and stuff. I feel like a James Bond villain or something. I don't know. But, and then from there, I added one more lens this summer, which has been awesome. It's my favorite lens. It's a little 85 millimeter, and it's only got one length. Very sharp lens. It gets good photos.
How expensive do those lenses get? I mean, I've done basic camera research and trying to find one for myself, but I mean, in talking to you and talking to other guys like Josh Paiva and Michael Larkin, like other photographers in the department, lenses can be an absurd amount of money. Do you think? Well, A, how expensive can they go, and B, do you believe that they're a worthy investment to make?
Oh, okay, so I'll answer the second part first. Invest in glass is like the big saying. Like, you could have like one of the like $500 camera bodies, but you could buy like a $4,000 lens, and it's invest in glass. That's basically, you invest in lenses, because the camera body only does so much. The lens, the type of glass, the quality of the glass really can make a photo. But in terms of how expensive they get, the most expensive one I have is $1,400.
$1,400 for a lens.
Yeah, the most expensive one I need to upgrade to is like $2,700.
That's crazy.
And the most expensive one, that if this career goes where I want it to, the most expensive one I'll ever own would be like $10,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that actually, Nate, now piques my interest. I mean, when you say where you hope this career goes, where you hope it to go, what is sort of the end goal for you beyond this? I mean, obviously you're a junior right now. You're still going to have you've got the rest of football, then you got moving to basketball, and then in the spring and baseball, then you got the next whole year after that. I mean, what do you look to do beyond this?
So after school, it's hard to get internships in sports photography while you're still in school because most of them run for a season. And even baseball starts in April. So it's hard to build an internship schedule around your class schedule. So the first thing out of college is probably looking for an internship with some kind of I will literally apply to every single internship in the country as soon as I graduate, or as soon as the applications become available. And then from there, it's just hoping you stick with one. You can get a year of experience in like a professional capacity under your belt, and then you can go out and you can start looking for jobs at like director of photography, or like an SEC school, or director, or like some places are just hiring photographers now, are freelancing for a wire service like Associated Press, USA Today, Getty Images, and then hopefully working up and up from there. And then I think my end goal is to work for like a league rather than a team. So like working for NFL Focus, which is their photo department, or ESPN Images, or MLB Photos would be like top 3, I guess.
That would be really cool. I mean, in this sort of world, have you seen like Randy Johnson? He's now a photographer.
Randy Johnson doesn't even do sports. Randy Johnson has like an exhibit in a London museum full of like safari Africa photos.
I didn't know that. That's actually really cool.
So Randy Johnson started his photography in like the last couple years of his career. So, and now he just goes to like Africa for a month, and he'll go on like safaris with locals. He'll just take these crazy photos of animals. Like if you go, he has a website for his photos because he's like a commercial photographer now. If you go on his website and you scroll through them all, none of them are sports. He doesn't even have a sports portfolio. It's concerts, which he's got some crazy concert photos. Mm-hmm. Just his name. Oh God, if I was a famous person, I could get into so much. But just like he's got some crazy concert photos of like guys like Chris Cornell, who rest in peace, no longer with us. But Chris Cornell, he's got the history there. He's got major festivals, and then he's got these crazy wildlife photos from Africa and other places like that.
And so, for anybody listening that may not know who Randy Johnson is a former MLB pitcher. He's won like 5 Cy Youngs, won the World Series with the Diamondbacks in 2001. This absolute monster of a human being. And he's like, I don't know, he's like 6'4", 6'5", like an absolutely huge dude that once he retired, instead of coasting off into the sunset per se, he's now just going across the world doing photography. I mean, the one instance that I remember seeing him was he was a photographer on the sidelines at some random like NFL game. It was like a Chiefs, It was like
Chiefs Cardinals last year.
Yeah, it was like Chiefs Cardinals.
It was like week 3 or something.
And then all of a sudden you just see Randy Johnson in a photographer's bib just hanging out on the sidelines. Like Larry Fitzgerald goes out to talk to him and everything, because it's like he sticks out like a sore thumb. So to see Randy Johnson in your arena doing sports photography, just for himself is pretty fascinating. But it's interesting to see that he's kind of moved into that whole other sphere of photography where he's kind of gone into nature and he's gone into other things. But I mean, just so it's fascinating to see how that sort of job sphere develops, because it's something that will never go away, because photography is something that everyone's intrigued in, and like photos are one of the biggest forms of media in the world. But it's like it seems like there's also like an endless array of ways to get into the industry, and to an extent, there's so many different companies and so many different programs that may want photographers and stuff. Do you think that you would ever move into like a non-sporting sphere if the opportunity presented itself?
I think if I did, it'd be concerts. Concerts, like festival, being like I mean, I don't know about like a touring photographer, because that's a lot. Yeah. You have to take on a lot to be a touring photographer, but like working festivals and stuff would be really cool. Like I've done some concerts at the Ryan Center, like I A Boogie last year, Don Tolliver last year, and then I don't even know who Death Cab for Cutie or the Postal Service were, but I did their concert.
Oh really?
Yeah, that was fun though, because that was the first one they've done here that had like a band on stage with them, so you get the guitar photos and stuff too, instead of just so cool. Instead of just a guy like hyping up a crowd.
Yeah,
but So concerts would, if I was to do anything other than sports professionally, it'd probably be concerts.
Concerts.
Never weddings.
No, no
Never
weddings.
weddings.
No, it's super particular if you're going to be a wedding photographer.
Yeah, like you can make so much money doing weddings, but it's just, I don't think I just wouldn't enjoy myself.
So everyone here is listening for sports. So let's pivot back.
Yeah, we can go back to sports.
Let's go back to the sports for a moment. So you said, we were talking beforehand, but just to rattle off, you work with URI football in the fall. You then work with basketball in the winter, and then baseball in the spring.
And
a 3-season man.
Yeah, and then also sprinkle in some soccer and some. Yeah, I guess really just soccer. I did some track and field last year too.
So wherever the marketing department needs you.
Yeah, wherever they need me, I just kind of show up and do my thing.
So I mean, what would you say is probably your favorite team to work with in terms of like maybe it's personalities on the team, or if it's like the way that they run like shoots, or just the game itself, like covering that. Like, what would you say is your favorite team at URI that you like to work with?
So in terms of working with the guys on the team, the baseball team's always been the best to me. And I think it comes from the idea that not a lot of people like baseball, so nobody wants to go take pictures at their games, but I love baseball, so I went to like every game my freshman year. So all the guys that were on the team then know me. So it's all like the juniors on the team now know me, they'll talk to me, and then it's like I'm like in their dugout during the game. So it's just the access of baseball. They kind of just like let me do what I want, and as long as I stay out of their way, there's no problem. And then the guys on the team are just really cool. They let me get up in their face and stuff and all that. And then this year it's kind of become the same way with football, though, because I've spent more time this year on football than I have in the past. I've gone on more trips with them this year. So now it's like their coaches, football's coaches, as long as you are not in their way, do not care really where I go, as long as I'm not a distraction to the team, the game, or them. So I get all access with them, and I can kind of like tell a story with them too. So that's really cool. So it's probably football and baseball are the two favorites and the easiest to deal with.
Is it difficult to work with a team like basketball when in the past couple of years there's been so much roster change and like you have to learn the new guys, like learn what they're comfortable with and so on?
Oh, for sure. Like it's definitely harder to build a relationship and like be able to gain access with them because there's so much coaching turnover and roster turnover. Like they have 3 guys returning from their entire roster last year, and even then those 3 guys probably didn't know who I was because like they run a really tight ship over there. So it's hard to like be creative with them because it's just so much change, so much like organization that their coaching staff has put together. In terms of like, and then they got Josh, love Josh. Not gonna say anything bad about Josh because I can't. Josh is their specific, like they hired Josh specifically to work with them. So I'm just kind of there getting the marketing shots, and Josh is doing all the content for the men's basketball team pretty much. So they all know Josh, and then I just I give them the photos that Josh doesn't. So then it's like, I mean, it's just been easier to create a relationship with the other teams because basketball already has their guy that's with them all summer.
Yeah, like you're the main guy.
I'm the main guy for
football and baseball.
Yeah.
Like so they look to you for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and then Josh is the main guy for basketball, and I'm like their backup. You know.
Have you ever moved into like sort of videography stuff like that, like how Josh does? Or are you strictly just like photography only?
Really photography only. The other day, actually, we were filming a video for the football team, and I was the secondary video guy for like the first time ever. So that was crazy. I had a little gimbal. I was walking around campus, following a guy in full uniform. So that was pretty funny. Walking around outside the Memorial Union with a football player in his full uniform.
Yeah, that's definitely probably caught a couple.
Oh,
the
looks we got were so funny. It's, yeah, we filmed the video the other day. I tried some video. I've done a few I like take clips every once in a while. I don't edit videos. I can't. Premiere Pro makes me so angry all the time. Like I've tried. I've had to try for some classes, and the other day it made me really mad, but it's just hard to use.
I think the only Adobe program that I use on like a consistent basis is Audition. When I edit these clips, when I put them up on Spotify, and so but I feel your pain. Adobe Premiere is a very daunting program that I just do not use.
It's
ever.
so confusing all the time. Adobe's a lifesaver in the same way though, because Adobe Lightroom is the best program I've ever used. It's so easy.
Oh yeah, well, I've seen you editing in every building possible on this campus, trying to get your photos out to all the athletes.
Yeah, I think if you tally up the buildings on this campus, if you go through, I think maybe 75% of them I've sat somewhere with Adobe Lightroom open on my laptop, whether it's in class or waiting for a class to start.
So outside of the relationship aspects in terms of working with teams, the game itself, which sport do you enjoy photographing the most? Because obviously football, basketball, and baseball, they're all completely different. They have their own quirks that make them unique and make them interesting. What would you say is your favorite sport to photograph?
So it's hard to define a favorite, because in different sports there's different aspects of what's fun to do. So like football is probably my favorite in terms of capturing the action, because it's such a fast-paced game. There's so many moving pieces on the field, 22 people out there running around. People are getting in your way. So when you nail that shot, it's the most satisfying thing in the world, because there's so much going on. In terms of creativity, baseball is my favorite, because it's 9 innings, 3 hours of a sport, where it's like you get a little break in between each pitch, and then you can like try different exposures, different composition, different like focusing techniques. You try to catch the ball and focus on its way to the plate and get the pitcher in the background out of focus. Stuff like that. And then in terms of like most interesting sport I've ever shot was growing up in New Hampshire, there's a bunch of ski mountains and stuff, and one of my high school teachers used to be a writer for Red Bull, so he runs like this little competition on the ski mountain right near my house every year for snowboarders. It's called like the Tyler Davis Hip Jam, and they set up this big like hip where they can all do crazy tricks off of it. So I just send him like a text or DM on Instagram and be like, hey, you mind if I come out and take pictures of this thing? And snowboarding is one of the craziest sports I've ever shot. Like some of the things these guys are doing, and then the angles you can get from like underneath the jump and everything. It's really cool. So like basketball is my least favorite sport to shoot though.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a big basketball fan. So and then the baseline's always uncomfortable, and
you're really sort of closed off.
You're really limited in basketball.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't really move around too much. It's either you go up in the stands and shoot down, or you shoot on the baseline under the basket, and then it's hard to get really creative in basketball. You kind of have to get lucky with the composition of how players are running across to get something super interesting.
And like I've seen some of your work most recently with football, and I mean like you talk about like that Darius Savage one-handed catch from like a week or two ago. When you get like moments like that, and you have like you got like an insane photo. What's that sort of feeling like when you go back home, like after the game's over, and you're going through all your photos, and you're like, whoa, all right, this photo's sick.
So sometimes you notice it right away, and you're like, wow, nailed that. Because then my first thought is, at least, I don't really appreciate the images until later when I'm going through them. But in the moment, it's like, okay, now where is, we'll say, Meg Ellis, because she's the one I have to get the photo to so she can post it right away, so they can like be like, oh, check out this catch, or like, oh, first quarter score, so they have a sick photo to use. So it's my first thought is, where is she? How can I get this photo to her very quickly? And then I move on to pretty much the next play. And then I get home and I'm like sorting through all my photos, and I'll come across this photo. I'm like, I don't even remember taking this, but this is sick. So it's just like, because I take a lot of photos per game. If you go, this season I've been carrying three different cameras for the whole game. So you tally up all the photos from each camera. It usually ends up being like 5,500 photos that I end up going through, and then I end up keeping around, which still the amount I keep is probably too much. I have to learn to like cut back a little, but it ends up being I keep like 700 of the photos.
Yeah.
And send them out. The players get access to them in their own way, but it's in terms of the reaction to like being like, oh, I nailed this photo. Sometimes I'll take a second in the game and I'll be like, wow, look at that. But usually it's right away. It's like, who do I give this to right away? Scoring plays mostly. But
it's then kind of jumping off of the same vein. I mean, you've done this for a couple years now. Do you have like a favorite moment that you look back on through photos that you've taken that you're like, wow, this is the coolest thing I think I've ever photographed?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the Governor's Cup last year, where they demolished Brown under the lights, it's probably one of the coolest sequences to go through. At least the trophy ceremony, because their whole celebration just lasts longer when it's a home game.
Yeah.
Because they go over, they do the fight song in front of the band, and then they're like pumping up the trophy and everything, I relive that specific ceremony a little bit more than other post games, because I had one of my photos from that. I entered into the World Sports Photography Awards, and it was shortlisted on the finalists.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so it was me and I want to say there was 20 other photos shortlisted, and it's just a bunch of other NFL photos.
This is worldwide too.
Yeah, it's open to worldwide. I don't know how many entries they actually get, but they have. I don't know. But all I know is that I'm one of 20 football photos chosen in the finalists for this last year's awards, and it was one of them holding up the trophy after the governor gave it to him. So I lived through that game a little bit more than others. And then, yeah, that's probably the one that's the coolest to look back on.
Yeah, I was there for that game, and then looking at their celebrations was pretty cool, because that was just they've dominated in the Governor's Cup, but for some reason last year the vibe after the game felt different, because it felt like, all right, a lot of the hard work over the past couple of years, really trying to build the program, was starting to truly mean something when they took home that big piece of silverware. And I mean, even this year too, they went up to Brown and then did the same thing. They were able to get a really gritty win over Brown, and I saw a lot of the photos. I saw a number of your photos, and it was really fascinating to see the celebration there too. And now, obviously, in a different setting, doing it at Brown. Brown probably didn't feel as good about losing that one at
that
home.
That one was close. That game was, that was stressful. Because for a little bit, you're like, hey, I'm here specifically because of that trophy, to get that photo. And then they're losing, or not losing. I forget how it went. But it was in the fourth quarter. It's a close game, and you're like, we might not get the chance to take that photo this year. And then it's really stressful watching them drive downfield. And then Saeed Gibbs is just a stud with the 2 picks and then sealing the game, and that was electric. The sideline celebrations there were nuts. So it's just telling a story is what I'm out there trying to do.
Telling a story, and it's really fascinating, just the stories that you do tell frame by frame. You look at the different pictures, some of them may not seem like they're related, but you put your roulette of game photos out there, whether it's just each individual photo is just an insane catch from a different angle, but it's all a really neat story. And I feel like you really convey that really well. That's obviously why football obviously keeps you around. That's why they let you travel with them. That was kind of what I was going to ask you next. I mean, when you're traveling with teams like football, and what's from you're obviously not a member of the team. You're not on the coaching staff. You're kind of just along there for the ride in a way, but you're documenting their travel. You're documenting their journey, their actions, and so on. What's that experience like, traveling to a hostile environment like that, another school, and then whether they win or not, just as someone who's, it's not in your prerogative to where if they win or lose, it doesn't really matter to you per se. What's that experience like for you?
So the biggest example of being oh, you're not really part of the team, but at the same time you are, is last year when they went to Pitt was crazy, because it didn't matter if you were on the team or not. When I walked by the student section, they were talking.
Really?
Yeah. They were hey, you got the wrong shirt on, because I'm sitting there with my URI polo on, taking pictures of the URI guys, and they're saying oh, you got the wrong shirt on, you're in the wrong state. This ain't your home, It's it's crazy. There hasn't been much of that this year, because no place they've gone has had a good crowd, because it's been bad weather every single time.
You have every time we have class at 9 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
I'm checking the weather.
Every single day I walk into class, the first thing you usually mention is we have bad weather for this weekend's football game.
Yeah, it's been 3 weekends in a row now. It started with, what was it? It started with Villanova, and then that's 4 weekends in a row now because it went Villanova, and then the weather wasn't great for Bryant, I don't think.
It was clear, then it was misting, then it rained, and then it kind of stopped. It was like during the game it rained a little bit.
And then at Brown was the worst. Brown, I almost broke a camera because of the weather. Yeah, it was bad. And then this weekend, fingers crossed, right now the rain's not coming until like 7 p.m.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing.
But
so,
I don't trust it. I don't trust this state to hold up.
Yeah, it's Rhode Island weather.
Yeah.
You can't ever trust it. And it's funny, every coming out of every weekend, I'm always expecting either like you, Michael, Josh, even Evan to say to me, "Oh, lost the camera," or a lens is broken, or something's waterlogged. And I mean, I remember even Josh talking about how he bought like a rain jacket for his camera.
Yeah, he has a little rain jacket thing. It's crazy.
How close have you gotten to really like losing a camera due to the weather? I mean, you said the Brown game, you almost lost the camera. What does that entail?
The Brown game, the whole second half was just it wasn't constant rain, but when it did start coming down, it came down kind of hard. So then one of the 3 cameras I had, by the time the trophy ceremony came around, it was like the LCD screen was starting to bug out a little, and then it was starting to show like lines across, and then it would cut in and out, and it was like, oh no. The first thing I did when I got back that night, I laid a towel on the table, put a fan up, and laid everything in my bag out on it. I was like, I really can't have anything broken here.
Yeah.
Because admittedly, I haven't found a good insurance policy yet for my gear, so I'm just kind of running it out there in the rain and just really praying that nothing breaks.
Yeah, that seems like something that you'd probably have to look into. Being like, all right, we gotta get at least make sure that this equipment stays going because this equipment's your livelihood to an extent.
Yeah, especially because everything I use except for one of the 3 camera bodies, I borrow one of those from our office, but everything else is mine. Like I own it, so I really can't break anything because then I have to buy myself a new one and. That's not cheap.
Yeah, no, not. I mean, we even talked about the lenses being $1,400. I mean, the camera bodies themselves can be in the thousands of dollars as well. So yeah, that's incredible. I would be terrified of bringing a camera out in the pouring rain like that. I would probably have brought myself my own, like, you know, the umbrellas you can like have like a harness on and have an umbrella over your head the entire time. That's what I would do. But even at the same time, you'd have the water dripping in front of the lens the whole time, and like it just would not work out.
I mean, I've tried like taping trash bags up to stuff, and then I just find they just end up getting in my way somehow, and then I eventually just rip them off anyway. But luckily, Sony builds some tanks of cameras, I guess, because these things have held up.
And so, as we're starting to approach the end of our session, there was one thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about was the UNH game last year.
Yeah.
From your particular expertise, obviously you got an opinion on this because URI lost the game on a basically ghost touchdown against UNH. UNH scored a touchdown. The camera angle that all the photographers had gotten showed that it was not a catch, but it wasn't reviewable because the replay review system on that part of the end zone was damaged.
And was that actually what it was?
That was what it was.
No
I remember
way.
That was I spoke about it with Kasim, and they said that the replay review system on that part of the field was damaged, so was unable to be used, and that's why all the calls on the field stood. But as a photographer in that part of the field, when that moment occurred, were you one of the photographers that got the photo?
I was that one photo that. If anybody listening had seen that on like one of those like FCS All Access Instagram pages, the one photo that circulated was the one I took.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the one that kind of like circulated of it all, like if you're looking at the carousel, they'd show the clip of what happened and then they show a photo, and that photo was mine. I specifically made sure that photo stayed in the keepers I put out, and it ended up with all the players, so they could access it and stuff. And then it wasn't a catch. It's like if you think about like, remember Jesse James?
Yes.
Got to survive the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Like they almost called a touchdown back last night in the Chiefs Broncos game. The one Cortland Sutton crazy catch.
Yeah.
They called it originally. He didn't survive the ground. It's the same kind of thing. The guy didn't survive the ground, and then it's just a complete miscall.
How badly did you want to go up to one of the officials like Patrick Beverley last year in the playoffs and show him the footage?
So as it happened, I showed which player was it? I want to say no, because he was on the field. I want to say it was like Dylan Shank, one of their kickers. I was standing next to him, and I pulled the camera up, and I was like, "This is not a touchdown." And then he was like, "You gotta show somebody." I was like, "What am I gonna do? What are they gonna do looking at my? They can't like revert my photo as an official replay review. They can't do anything with it."
Yeah.
But like, it was really frustrating because that loss effectively knocked them out of the playoffs too.
It's something that they still definitely hold pretty close. When I spoke to Kasim was very adamant that game is circled on his calendar. He still remembers everybody involved in that final play.
I remember seeing it was June when they released I think it was June when they released their full schedule. There were players posting on their Instagram stories those little countdown clocks, and it was like Get Back Day or something, and it was the UNH game, and it was like 4 months and however many days, how many hours until kickoff on that game, and like they're ready for that game. They want that game. They all have it. Every single player that was on that team last year has it circled.
That is going to be an exhilarating contest, and hopefully it's not raining. Hopefully it doesn't rain for that.
It probably will be.
Well, Connor, we are approaching the end of our time here today, so I just wanted to say thank you for coming on, joining me today. It was very interesting to hear your perspective on how a lot of these sports work and just your view of how everything unfolds from the sidelines, from behind the lens, and obviously everybody at URI is very appreciative of the photos that you put out, especially the journalists, because I, for one, use your photos all the time for my articles, and I really do appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will be back next week with a new guest, possibly. I'm going to see about getting a guest put in. I'm going to be in Miami covering a golf tournament next weekend. Going to be leaving here on Friday, so if we don't have a new guest for next week, we'll probably have a recycled show, but regularly scheduled programming will be back, I believe, on Friday the 27th. So keep that date circled, everybody, and I will see you all in the next one.